the Premier League season in full swing, there's a great idea that's happening at the Dubliners. That's the Le Méridien Dubai Hotel and Conference Centre, where if you get down there over the next 5 weekends, you can listen to fireside chats pre-match with Premier League legends, giving you all the info and insights and maybe even telling a few stories about what happened along the way. My next guest is one of them. He's a legend of the Premier League, having played for Charlton Athletic, so many clubs right throughout his career, and also getting 30 caps for Wales after being originally born in Rhodesia. John Robinson is our guest on Talk 100.3. Thank you very much for coming in.
No, my pleasure.
And this is a great insight where you can get down there and hear from yourself and some other Premier League greats and give you a bit of a different insight rather than just listening to your mates go on about what the team should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I think that's what Peter's trying to do with Hollywood Balls, is to kind of give you an insight into what it was like when you were playing. Yeah. Some stories, that kind of thing, which fans don't sometimes always hear, especially when they're on people are just on maybe like Sky doing just analytics and stuff. So yeah, it's all good. So it's looking forward to it.
Right. I mean, you mentioned that, people don't get to hear these stories. How about starting with a story, a story that has been doing rounds, a story that's extremely popular during your times? Well,
one of the stories was I was Ryan Giggs' roommate for 7 years, and it's amazing how you can see why those kind of people are so. They have a long career. Look at Ronaldo, those kind of things, how they look after themselves throughout their career. And it was quite funny one time, Alex Ferguson, who Ryan used to get quite a lot of hamstring injuries, but he always used to come, especially on the Wales trips, it would be like, what cars Ryan got next? What kind of sports cars Ryan got it? So everyone's looking in that. And then then that was the problem. He changed his sports car so many times. That was the problem with his hamstring. So Alex Ferguson ended up telling him, like, no, you're going to get this kind of S-Class, really like a family-orientated car, and that's it. And then after that, his hamstrings were decent.
Oh,
yeah. So it's amazing.
I need to sell my Ferrari.
You need to sell your Ferrari,
So this is what's wrong.
We all do.
This is what's wrong with Manchester United. Too many cars these days.
In the Premier League.
Well, I mean, speaking of Manchester United, the talking point is about Cristiano Ronaldo. If you were managing him, what would you advise him to stay, or would you advise him to find another club?
You would put the team around him. I think you'd make him captain. I think all of that, because what he's done is incredible. And you just look at the way he trains. You just listen to ex-pros, Rio Ferdinand, when they're on, like Gary Neville. They were behind the scenes, and fans don't get to understand when you're training who stays out, who's there first, who leaves last,
right.
Who works on their trade in different positions. And he hasn't been in the top level for this long if he doesn't look after himself. And again, you just look at all the records he's done with the Champions League now at the moment. And again, he aspires to try and keep going after records. That's the thing. He doesn't need the trophies. He wants records. He wants that kind of established kind of, right, I am the top. So personally, you put this captain around him, you make him that, he'll thrive on that, obviously, and people respect him. The players respect him for just what he's done.
How can you not? I think that you'd be thinking the young up-and-coming players that are coming through, and as he said, you get to learn what's different about him, about the way he eats, about the way he trains, about his mindset. A couple of years ago, wasn't he at the press conference where he took the bottle of Coca-Cola down?
That's right. Yeah.
Which was the major sponsor at the time.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
They had to say, don't drink it.
Exactly. I mean, that's it. I mean, you just look at him. You're right, with the nutrition, the way he looks after his body. He doesn't drink throughout the season, all of those kind of things. And you're right, the younger ones coming in, and also the new players coming in straight away, they'll jump on board.
Makes sense.
I mean, you signed your first sort of premiership professional contract 87, and then you wrapped up, some 15, 16 years later.
Yeah.
Was that the biggest change in your time between seeing the 80s and the mid-noughties? Was it the element of nutrition and fitness that came into the game?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with all of a sudden, probably the last 3 or 4 years when I was playing, you would have a fitness coach come in.
Yeah.
And before that, the managers would just say, right, run up that hill, and until you drop in pre-season, until you drop, that's it. Fitness is coming up. But they then started to bring the fitness coaches in, everything like that. And then what you ended up doing, you ended up having what you see now is the vests and that, and then the heart monitor. Well, we used to run around a pre-season. The first time our fitness coach did it, when it bleeped, you had to stop because you got to your
peak level.
But obviously, when you just come back for pre-season,
Peak level's pretty quick.
Very, very quick. So about halfway round the field, most of the players were stopping. The manager in the middle, who was old school, Alan Kirbishley, he was going mad. He's like, no, carry on running, carry on running. We're like, no, it's bleeping, we can't do it. And Joe was our fitness coach, and but it was amazing. No one got any muscle injuries. So he had for the first time, when that fitness coach came in, he had a full set of squad of players to choose from for the first game.
Yeah, well, you see, Neil is actually a strength and conditioning coach working with the UAE cricket side.
Right.
And, are you into that? Because you hear the old timers, specifically with cricket, go, back in my day, we'd just bowl and bowl and bowl. Does it really make a difference?
I mean, see, that's when I started training, right? When I used to play, when I started playing, I was about 6.5, 7 when I started going to the academy to play. Old school coaches, the same way, they would sit on an armchair and say, 4 rounds of the ground. You finish 4 rounds, and then they make you lift the kid back over your head to do 2 more rounds. I mean, that what we would call in the gyms as a superset, to go a little more than your prime. But they would make us do that, and you'll drop dead. You don't have any energy, any strength to go on to play. But today's time and age, every single player is different. So when we analyze and structure in a workout plan, for a bowler, it's different. For a batter, it's different. For a spin bowler, it's going to be different. For a fast bowler, it's different. Prevention of injuries is the most important thing.
What's amazing, you just look at Manchester United's game when Brentford outran them. You would never have got that kind of analyst stuff back then. There was nothing that was available. But then all of a sudden, he says, right, instead of the day off, you're coming in and I'm going to run you because I don't want that team outrunning us. And if that's his philosophy, that's great, regardless of who it is, and then look at the results after that.
True. Yep.
Yeah, when it first came in Australia, there was an Australian footballer who put the heart rate monitor on his dog. And then, it's so common, and then they called him in going, your performance is exceptional.
Oh, so funny you mentioned that. So we did that once a pre-season. It was the first time. And it was normally a day off on a Sunday. So it was like, right, and we're like, it's called recovery run. So rather than bring us in, you're like, right, do it at home, do your recovery run, and then on Monday you'd give it to Joe, put it in your little area, and he'll then go back, and then come Tuesday you'll see what's happening. He'll report back to the manager. Right. So I was like, God, don't fancy it this today. So I ended up putting it around the dog. Same thing. I rode the bike. The dog kind of came along with it. Yeah. Brilliant. So I phoned up a couple of the lads. I was like, yeah, honestly, this works. So a few of them done it. So then on the Tuesday, 3 of us got brought into the manager's office, Curbs, and I'd known him for years. So you did really well then, didn't you? You proper did the recovery. Oh yeah. And all 3 of us were in. And he was like, problem is, animal sweat, so there's hair on the thing. So
they knew what was happening. They could pick it up. Look. We know you're here to do a lot of these Premier League chats, but being Welsh, we couldn't get you in without asking you. The FIFA World Cup's coming up in Qatar. Wales have made it. How do you feel they're going to go in their group?
I think they do well. Yeah, I think it's all about the start. Obviously, it's a good game against the USA
because you've got that group. It's Wales, Iran,
and England. So it's USA's first game, and I think that's a real good start. As long as you don't lose, because if you lose your first game, you have to win your second to give any kind of chance or whatever. But I think they'll do well. I think the confidence is high. And it's going to be very, very interesting because of where it's at. So I think they'll qualify for the last 16. Wow. And for the
so you think it'll be England and Wales that get out?
Yeah. Ooh. Now whether who will get first or second, not too sure. Yeah. But so obviously I'm looking at Wales, and my wife Natalie's obviously going to be England, so there could be a bit.
So you're going to win either way. Yes.
Either way, yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah. But hopefully.
No, I mean, John, being a professional player, and I have this conversation with a lot of players who've played the sport at the highest level. But the day you hang your boots, Serena Williams just did, and I'm going to cut across sports. The day you hang boots, does it feel after that, oh, you know what, maybe one more season I could have probably pulled myself through? Or what am I going to do after this now?
Yeah, I think majority of players do that. But I think now, as I said, as you go later on in your career, you have all this, as you say, the good people, the correct people in the right industry helping you as a sports athlete, which is great. But for me, it was a little bit different. So I was like 32, and I still had a year to run on one of my contracts. And I always said, though, and I think it should be how it is, but that's always how my mentality was, that football was a hobby that I was privileged to do. It was never a job. When it became a job, that's when I knew I'd step away from football. Right. My dad passed away when I was probably 2 years, year and a half prior to me retiring. And the same with international. Mark Hughes was the manager. He was coming up to the European qualifiers. So I stepped away from the squad because I didn't want to take up a squad position if I wasn't really 100% committed. And for the last 10 years, I was always committed going into that squad. And then going into my last year, going into my first year of my first contract with the new club, I went into it and then came out of it. And in that summer, once I lost my dad, I said, you know what, I'm done. So I actually then decided not to bother with my second year, and I just said to the chairman, take the contract, rip the contract up. Wow. That's it. And I retired at 32, and I knew I knew probably I had about another three years at least left in me. But when you come out of it, it is, you do think you can obviously go longer, but it's such a void. Yeah, it is such a void.
Like you miss waking up at a certain time, your trainings, your drills, eating right, all of that, sleeping on a particular time.
But it's just the buzz of going into a game.
Yeah,
shouldn't matter what level it's at, whether you're at the top level, whether you're coming at that. The buzz of going, you work all hard during that week. You're going there, you're turning up on a Saturday, you get yourself going. You want to impress the fans, your coaches, your teammates. You want to get a result, and at the end of it, the end of the season, that's wherever you finish, that's where you've determined. But
yeah, I mean, you could talk about this for hours. I spent most of my time in Australia, and a rugby league player I know quite well suffered mentally when he retired. Yeah. And his doctor said, you know what, get up in the morning, go to the beach, watch the sunrise, breathe in the fresh air. And he tells the story. So I went down there in the morning and I was on the beach and I watched the sunrise and I went, this is crap, I've won grand finals.
I don't want to be at the beach.
Anyone could do this.
I want 50,000 people around.
Yeah, exactly.
It is, yeah. No, but that's what it is, and that's what drives people, and I think that's how it always is. And you're right. For me, I knew I had to still, even retired, had to be involved in football. I could not be involved in football in some capacity.
Well, you still are involved in football, certainly here in the UAE. You've been back for a bit over a year now. And I was certainly going for the UAE to qualify for the World Cup until they came up against Australia. Then my allegiance quickly changed. But how do you think the local talent is coming through? What do you think the country needs to do to maybe go to the next level?
Well, obviously they've got the Pro League, and it's obviously for the youngsters. I think there's a lot of academies out here, a lot of youth clubs out here, but I think the coaching's good. I just think the opportunities, and I think people should come together as different clubs because there is talent here, and I've seen it so many places. When you have a youth club, as I call them, whether it's academy, grassroots in England, whatever it is, when you have young footballers, the reason why you're doing it is to give them opportunities. And then, so if there's different organisations that come in that can offer a different pathway for them to whether it's a semi-pro, whether it's that, then rather than just keep them within your club, work together for the benefit of the players, because that's the reason it is. So I think that because otherwise the players get lost and then they don't move clubs, or they don't get to train or coach with other players from other clubs, which ultimately, when you just look at the transfers, it's just Premier League, all of a sudden one player is playing for Paris Saint-Germain, he's all of a sudden now he's going to play for Man United. Totally different players.
True.
So it's that mentality, because that's at the top level and you go into the professional game, you have to understand, 1 minute the coach is here, Chelsea, all of a sudden now you have to play a different way with a different manager. They may bring in 2 or 3 different players that weren't there 2 weeks ago. How can you adapt?
True.
And I think that's how the players will evolve from there.
How important is an agent's role in all of this? And do they actually go tapping at such a young level where you are not even a pro?
In England now you can't. Obviously there's a certain age you can only go into, but the agents have their own role, and it's generally for themselves. It really is. When you get to a professional level,
Right. Yeah.
sometimes it's not always the benefit of the player.
Right.
And I think that's where parents come in really well. And some people would look at like my dad said I could have gone to Arsenal as a schoolboy,
Right. Yeah.
as a youngster,
Yeah, sure.
but I didn't. We went to Brighton, my local team,
Mm-hmm.
who can see they brought youth players through because they
Right.
weren't able to. They weren't in the same level as Arsenal at the time, so that was a better opportunity for you to maybe progress through the system.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And I think that's where that is, rather than an agent may go, well, go there because it's a big name, or a parent may go, well, go there because my son or daughter, as well in England, there's a lot obviously there now, is playing for a bigger club or a bigger name club. So the agents I didn't have an agent.
Okay. So
I literally had handshakes. And
wow.
that was it.
Times have changed.
Times have changed, yeah.
Well, you can hear more stories about this from John Robinson and many others. The Dubliners are hosting the Fireside Chats. Danny Simpson, Stephen Taylor, many more are going to be down there. There's Sam Allardyce, Kevin Campbell. There's a heap of them. The games are going across the next 5 weeks, beginning this weekend at 2 p.m. Man City versus Tottenham Hotspur. It's the Dubliners get down there at the Le Meridian Dubai Hotel and Conference Centre. Look, we could talk to you all afternoon and hear some of these stories. So we appreciate you coming in, John, and sharing part of your story here on TSB.
Pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Superb. So, but before we let John go,
Yeah.
3 top predictions. 1, the FIFA World Cup. Who wins it?
Oh, tough one.
Wales. He's
I tell
thinking
you-
Wales.
No, I mean, hey, my heart's saying Wales.
And you're getting the sign of England from there?
I think you can't go much further. Maybe I think England got a decent chance.
Okay, we're fading the microphone down.
I think they've got a decent chance. Again, it all gets off, but again, it all goes in draw. So, but maybe Brazil.
Yeah. All right. Question number 2, Premier League.
Premier League, Man City.
And last one?
Last one, Champions League.
Real Madrid.
Yeah, they look good last
They
night.
looked special.
Celtic
I saw
held
some
it
of
for
the
an
games.
hour and then they just went bang, bang,
Yeah,
bang.
again, it comes in that experience.
Yeah, it was a great one. John, thank you for coming in.
Pleasure again.
It's the
Thanks very
Dubliners
much.
this weekend starting from 2 at the Le Meridian Conference Centre if you want to get down there up near the airport. You're on TSB, Talk Sport Business on Talk 100.3.